Welcome to the Times of Israel's daily briefing. Today is Sunday, June 15th, day 618 of the war. Amanda Borschel-Dan here with our diplomatic reporter, Lazar Berman. Hi, Lazar. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Hi, Amanda. Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov, we can only hope, right? But on Friday, IDF spokesperson Brigadier General Efi Defrin told Israelis that Israel is in an ongoing war against Iran and to be prepared for many days of a campaign against the Islamic Republic. In the meantime, following Israel's surprise June 13th attack, Iran has launched waves of explosive-laden drones and missiles over the Jewish state and hitting many, many spots. Over the past night, for example, 10 Israelis were killed, 200 injured in the Iranian barrages, in addition to the 3 Israelis killed the previous night and dozens injured, including 7 IDF soldiers. So Lazar will fill us in on Operation Rising Lion, how it's going so far, including the daring Mossad operation that launched the operation inside Iran. We'll discuss Iran's capabilities for retaliation and what roles the U.S. has and perhaps could play in this war. All of this and more when we're back.
The law basically assumes that the enemy force you are fighting may not care about your civilians, but it certainly cares about its own civilians. What do we do in a reality where you're dealing with an enemy that the suffering of their civilian population is inherent to their war strategy? Now, that doesn't absolve us of our obligations. Hamas's inhumanity does not absolve us of the obligation to humanity. But the context that it creates, I think, is critical to the conversation, and it's very lacking.
I agree, but when democracies fight back against terror groups, they have to fight on 2 fronts. They have to both fight on the terms that have been laid out by the terror group, and the second thing you have to fight back is by preserving the norms of a democracy. We're forced to ask these moral questions about what we are and what we do, but based on an enemy that is not playing by the rules. But that's what we decide to be a part of by being the family of nations. And as Jews, we say, like every morning in our prayers, we say, Anachnu Amcha b'nei britecha. We choose to be the people of God's covenant, meaning we tie ourselves to an aspiration of justice and righteousness.
And we're back. I'm Amanda Borschel-Dan here with our diplomatic reporter, Lazar Berman. Obviously, this is a very changing story, so listeners, please check out our live blog on the site for updates. During Saturday night's barrage of Iranian ballistic missiles, one slammed into a 9-floor building in Bat Yam. At least 6 people were killed. 3 are still missing at recording time, and the rubble is being sifted by the Home Front Command. Lazar, what can you tell us of the events over last night, for example?
So last night was the heaviest barrages from Iran that we've seen so far. There was 2 major barrages. One that was focused on Haifa in northern Israel. That's where a 2-story home in the Arab village or city of Tamra was hit, killed 4 women in the family, a mother, 2 daughters, and another relative. Then there was another barrage later in the night, which was focused on central Israel, and that's the one that hit Bat Yam. There was also a strike in Rehovot. The strike in Rehovot led to many being injured as well, but so far, thank God, no casualties. The Bat Yam attack, as you mentioned, hit a residential building, and you can see, from photos on our site and elsewhere, that there was really extensive damage. The Home Front Command says that everyone who actually was in shelters during the attack survived. But unfortunately, as you said, 6 people were killed in that attack.
And of course, they're still missing, being located, hopefully, in the rubble very soon. The capabilities of Iran are a bit of a mystery to me, at least, Lazar, after all of the barrages from Israel on the Iranian sites. We hear different numbers. How many ballistic missiles could Iran still have and be able to launch to Israel? Do you have any sense of Iran's capabilities at this time?
So we're starting with about 2,000 ballistic missiles, medium-range ballistic missiles that can reach the 1,000 miles between the 2 countries. They weigh, something a little bit under a ton, and pack a warhead that's significant. Let's get 700 kilograms of explosive material. That is significant. It's flying fast. It's a lot of explosive. It can, as we've seen, can do some real damage. some of them in their arsenal are also maneuverable, meaning that when they come back into the atmosphere, they have GPS, they have fins, and they can correct themselves and really get close, to the precision strikes that they're going for. Israel has said that none of what they have faced so far have been the maneuverable ones, so they still can be pretty precise. They have a homing system, and then they are fired towards specific targets. Perhaps it seems some of them, were trying to target the Kiryat in Tel Aviv or other institutions, but the ones that hit residential areas like Bat Yam just seems to be kind of statistical and just sending it toward places where they know a lot of Israelis live and they're sure to hit something. Now, what Israel has been trying to do, and one of its main efforts, is to take out not only commanders who are responsible for giving the orders to fire the missiles, but also the physical infrastructure themselves. The effort that Iran is doing to counter this is to quickly move their missiles away from bases. You see that they have these commercial trucks that have been fitted to carry one or two missiles and can launch them from different sites, and trying to diffuse them as quickly as possible throughout the country. That'll make it much, much quicker for Israel to hunt them down. So what Israel is trying to do is to hit as many bases and stores as possible while tracking where these missiles go and trying to, over time, degrade them. Of course, the more Iran fires, the less it has left. The more Israel is able to hit, obviously, its stocks will dwindle. But as of now, it still does seem to have significant numbers. But there was also an IRGC official who spoke to an American outlet. I forget which one exactly, but they were saying that they're only firing, well below 50%, maybe something like 20% of what they planned to originally. So certainly, if the Israeli efforts have taken out a lot of their capabilities, we see that they're still able to fire, that some are able to get through, but it's not what they had planned initially. Now, you might ask, why are these getting through? I mean, why is this so much more damaging this time? Are they firing anything different? So the interception rates remain the same. It's the fact that in the past they were firing primarily at IDF or IAF bases in the desert. So if something gets through, it hits the desert or it hits a runway, like happened at one of the IAF bases. But this is different. When you fire at population centers, even if you miss exactly where you're going or you get through at all, you're going to hit something. And the chances are you're going to hit a populated area where people are home at night.
And Israel, for its part, has also been trying to destroy the infrastructure of the potential nuclear bomb. This has been obviously the major goal. But we understand last night that the Israel Air Force is operating freely over Tehran. So what does that mean? Does that mean that Israel itself is also trying to get infrastructure that could be within the capital city itself? Or is it just a statement saying how Israel has really deactivated all of the anti-aircraft missiles that Iran has left over from previous strikes?
No, so the Tehran means Tehran itself. Now that there was, the way I read this is that there was not a decision made ahead of time at the beginning of the operation whether they're going to hit Tehran or not. But once Iran started firing at Israeli population centers, the next move was to retaliate by escalating that way. You heard Defense Minister Israel Katz say that Tehran will burn. Israel targeted some fuel depots in Tehran, some sites connected to nuclear research. So they certainly have been hitting sites in Tehran, and they would not necessarily have done so if Iran had reacted differently. And there's also striking oil and natural gas infrastructure elsewhere in the country. So while this is not the core of the nuclear program, this is not the Fordo site or Natanz Isfahan. This is a way to punish and perhaps even deter the regime from firing on Israeli population centers in the future, but it seems to not be working so far.
So, as I mentioned, so far, 13 Israelis have been killed by the Iranian missiles. And out of Iran, the numbers basically stopped Friday morning. I haven't seen an update. I had our Farsi site. Yes, the Times of Israel has a Farsi site. I had that editor, Avi Davidi, look into it in Farsi to see if any more numbers, casualty numbers, have come out of Iran. But indeed, when he checked, there were no updated figures aside from the almost 80 dead on Friday morning and 330 wounded. So how do you see the Iranian regime playing this to its own populace so far, Lazar?
So it depends. There's some sites and some outlets which are very, pro-regime or regime-controlled. Some are more independent. I know that some of the more independent ones have been saying things about how incredibly precise and how deeply Israel's intelligence penetrated the regime. So there's certainly plenty of outlets within Iran who are reporting on this somewhat independently. But yeah, within the regime, their interest is to hide the extent of the damage, to play up images of flames and damage within Israel, to show that they can indeed keep citizens safe. And of course, they're always looking over their shoulder, worried about what might happen if there's another civilian uprising. Now, it doesn't seem there's been any damage to the levers of power that punish or control the civilian population. It's not like the besieged militias or those type of forces have been a target of Israel. Maybe they will in the future if they make a decision that they're going for regime decapitation and enabling regime change. But that seems to be an escalation that Israel has not decided on yet.
Okay, let's go to a short break and then speak about the role of the United States in all of this.
What surprised you the most discovering about Jewish life in the United States?
I think it's the pride. I think I was envy of that pride. Just being proud, being a proud Jew. It's something that I never even contemplated. I was just an Israeli. I think the fact that, in Israel, we have all sort of sectors in society. You kind of grow up with your kind. I hate that. The fact that I don't know a lot about my Jewish life and I need to go abroad just to understand that. It's something so messed up and how we grew up here. It's just, I think, once it got political to be Jewish in Israel, it made me kind of push away from that. Once I got to LA, once I got just being with my daughters abroad, just understanding what we are, my heritage, where we come from, our story, our values. It took me a long time. It took me a long time to get there.
And we're back. I'm Amanda Borschel-Dan here with our diplomatic reporter, Lazar Berman. So, Lazar, the American air defense systems and a Navy destroyer have so far helped Israel shoot down the incoming ballistic missiles that Tehran has shot at Israel. But as far as we understand, Israel is going it alone in terms of the attacks on Iran. Is that your understanding as well?
Oh, absolutely. That the U.S. and Trump himself has not committed to taking part in the offensive operation. Of course, that could change. And Trump seemed to hint that that could change. What could change it? I think, obviously, any attacks on U.S. forces, facilities in the region, I think that would tip that over the edge. There's a question of what would happen if Iran attacks Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain. Now, you remember that Trump's first trip to the region was to those countries, so he has a very close relationship with those leaders and thinks very highly of them. So that might also tip his decision making as well. And if there's some sort of terrorist attack in Europe or the U.S., that could also as well. But so far, the U.S. has been actively involved in shooting down drones and ballistic missiles. There's the Al-Assad air base in Iraq. The Al-Assad base in Iraq, which has been involved as well. There's Patriot batteries. There's Navy destroyers, which are situated in the Mediterranean. There's the THAAD battery within Israel, which has been operating also against the Houthi missiles. So there's a lot of hardware in the region. Now, we do note that Trump did not move anything additional into the region in recent weeks. So that there's less than what there could have been, but there is certainly a lot here. And I'll just note that Jordan, under the pretext or under the reasoning of defending its own airspace, has been shooting down drones over its own airspace as well. Obviously, those are headed toward Israel. So, like in the past, Jordan is involved. It doesn't seem like the other Arab states are actively shooting down ballistic missiles. There's capability gaps there, but there are certainly radars and other systems that, when the U.S. and ideally Israel can plug into, it gives much more information and much more early warning about what's coming out of Iran.
Okay, so you mentioned capability gaps, and Iran does not have the air force that Israel does, obviously, but it does have quite the navy, as I understand it. And so I do wonder if the navy were to be deployed against Israel. It is quite a long route to get over to Israel, of course. But do you suppose that the U.S. at that point would step up its naval engagement against Iran?
Yeah, I think it was clear if they were sailing through the Red Sea to try to get at Israel, which would be a suicide mission. I mean, those would be platforms that are just sitting there in the Blue Sea for, once we know that we can strike in Yemen. So once they get anywhere close to the Red Sea, they would just be kind of sitting ducks for Israeli capabilities. Yeah, I don't anticipate that happening. It's not a full blue water navy. I will note that Israel has ballistic missiles itself. As the Jericho series, which we haven't seen used yet. So this is, this is an Air Force heavy mission, but we still have a significant capability that I don't even know if there's plans to use it, but something to keep an eye on as well.
Last note on the U.S. involvement, of course, there's a bit of a mixed reporting how much Trump did or did not know ahead of the strike or when he began to know. But apparently the United States covertly shipped about 300 AGM-114 Hellfire air-to-ground missiles to Israel on Tuesday of last week. And because the missiles were part of this gazillion-dollar arms package that was approved by Congress in February, the transfer didn't require any kind of notification. So, number one, obviously Trump knew ahead of Tuesday's shipment, but also 300 of these missiles does not sound like a lot. But do you think it was the game changer that allowed Israel to actually perform this operation?
No, I mean, what happens is Israel is using all sorts of firepower. Syria, Lebanon, of course, Gaza is most intensive, but it's not like it hadn't been building up for this possibility. I mean, Netanyahu says that he made the decision in November. There's no way that Israel is going to just, have to wait for some sort of last minute shipment to be able to do things. But you don't want to be in a position where you're leaving yourself vulnerable to being without preparations, without munitions for any sort of unanticipated consequences, or if this goes longer than possible. So all this backfilling is very, very important. Yeah, and in terms of what capabilities we have, I mean, the big question is the underground site at Fordo and what damage we can do there. We don't seem to have the massive bunker busters that the U.S. does to do damage, deep underground. The question is if we've identified some sort of vulnerability that we could damage to shut it down, whether it's the electricity there, whether it's all sorts of access points or we can cause something to collapse. That's a question now, and we've seen the focus be on Natanz on day one. We've seen some damage to Isfahan as well. The question is what we have planned for Fordo. You could also conceivably contemplate a ground attack there, that commandos are dropped on the ground and then they go into the site and blow it up, like we saw Israel did over its northern border a few months ago.
Right. And another comparison to the northern border operations, we're talking about Lebanon. When Israel attacked and terminated and assassinated the leader of Hezbollah, Nasrallah, there was use of these gazillion massive, huge bunker buster bombs. And so is the supposition now, is the hypothesis that we just don't have anymore and it needs to be restocked?
No, it's this thing is so much better protective than anything Nasrallah was doing and anything that they could build in Lebanon. You really need something like the Moab, the mother of all bombs, or something like that to really be guaranteed that you're going to do the damage, and that's something that we don't have.
I'm going to take that for it. Now, Lazar, you and I spoke with Manny Emmanuel Fabian, our military reporter, on Friday, but news broke just after we finished speaking about the Mossad's involvement in the operation that allowed this operation to get off the ground. And it appears to me that, as you just mentioned, commando forces in Iran, it's possible that we already had commando forces in Iran, or are these locals who operated this counterintelligence and also some drone operation? You tell me what happened, essentially.
Yeah, so there were clearly Mossad agents, I'm sure without a doubt locals cooperating as well, preparing for this type of operation and using a lot of creativity, and these things took a long time to plan. One of them was building this drone base within Iran that on Friday was able to be activated and to take out some key air defense sites. And that's something that we saw from the Ukrainians as well, who in a different way smuggled drones next to strategic bombers in Russia. So this was all that, the same type of creativity. You also had trucks being smuggled in with advanced weapon systems that were operated by people on the ground as well. So there was a range of efforts here that took a lot of daring, a lot of risk taking, and ultimately people on the ground who had to operate them, who had to move around the country and build things and set up systems without being detected. That takes a lot of planning and probably a lot of cooperation with locals on the ground who understand and who are able to get to places where Israelis can't, of course.
So is the hypothesis that Israeli commandos have already been on the ground, or is it a purely remote kind of operation?
No, there was certainly Mossad agents on the ground and doing some of the things. The question is, when they got there, how they got out, and what sort of use was made of local agents and local people who are cooperating with Israel.
Lazar, thank you so much for clearing that up for me. The news is changing every single second. We'll finish recording, and of course, this podcast too will be passé. So please do check out our live blog on the Times of Israel website. Lazar, thanks for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Times of Israel's daily briefing. Please check out another installment tomorrow. This episode was produced by the Podwaves and video edited by Thomas Gersh. If you have any questions or comments about this or any other episode, please drop us an email to podcast@timesofisrael.com. Until tomorrow, shalom.